Play.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whatever time it is in the world, wherever you are tuning in from. If you're thinking to yourself, 45 minutes late, John's got a beer on the go, that doesn't seem like good preparation for an ATP Weekly as we look back on a US Open where we saw a dramatic final in which Daniil Medvedev won in 5 sets. That was incredible. Checks notes. Oh, maybe not the best preparation ever. Damien, by the way, there was one moment in the last couple of points that I look back on, and you stick your tongue out in a kind of a, oh, what have I just seen here? Did that sort of sum up your feelings about that final?
I don't remember the exact point, but I think there were three sort of neutral rally errors from Medvedev in that one, and I think that was after one of them. At that point I was definitely very disappointed with the final. We have to remember that the second set was there, that Medvedev had that set point, that Medvedev had a great opportunity. He passes down the line, he probably takes it. Although, to be honest, the angle wasn't that open, but still, he probably takes it. And we also had these moments when Djokovic was about collapsing. Whether you think it's theatrical or whatever, he was still, really exhausted. He was basically forced to keep serving volleying to survive. So there was some excitement in this final. But simply by the time Daniil lost the second set, I think we all on the stream, me, Jack, and you, we just all lost that excitement completely. And we were just sort of waiting for the inevitable. The inevitable actually came earlier than expected, probably, because, the third set, well, Djokovic lost that break, right? But it didn't matter in the end at all because he broke back right away. And by the time we had the end of the third set, I was just feeling very disappointed with that final, which, after a day, I guess I don't really care that much anymore. But certainly yesterday, there was a feeling of, did we really lose Alcaraz Djokovic over this? Was it really worth it? And let me tell you, it was not.
Yeah, I mean the drama, if there was drama, and actually there was, but it was fleeting, was between I think about 4-3 and then the tie break. I also remember even the tie break thinking, okay, I think there was a mini break advantage very early on, 2-0 I think for Daniil. And I was thinking, right, you need this at the changeover. You need to have that 4-2 cushion. It's not much of a cushion, but you need that. Once it was 3-3, it's like, okay. To be fair, Daniil made it a big contest until 5-4. But there was a feeling going into the tie break, and then it transpired, and then it just carried over into the third set of this could have been and should have been a really good and maybe even amazing final, and it just sort of petered out really from that tiebreak onwards, right?
I think after
I know there was the break back. Mm-hmm. There was the break back in the, but that was
that was like a brief moment of us actually saying, "Oh, maybe this is not over yet." But I think for the most part, we were expecting that if Medvedev loses the first 2 sets, this is probably over. Whether it's going to be in 3 or 4, I don't know. But we all know how tough it's against Novak Djokovic. Well, not from first-hand experience, obviously, but just the fact that he has only lost once after winning the first 2 sets against Jürgen Melzer is something that definitely is at this point engraved in our memories and in our minds. I don't know if it is like this for Daniil Medvedev too. Maybe not. Maybe he's not really that aware of that stat. But it kind of shows, what sort of player Novak is. And it felt like the second set is absolutely crucial for Medvedev. He did not take it, and that's on him. But on the other hand, he was actually getting consistently outplayed in this match outside of that physical deep from Djokovic.
What do you think Medvedev could have done differently? I mean, there has been some post-match comments regarding, Medvedev repeating the level that he displayed against Carlos, I think his words were 12 out of 10. It could have been 11 out of 10. Either way, we understand what he means. And he wasn't quite able to replicate that. But is there anything that maybe he could have done tactically? Because it's 24 hours later, and I'm not really sure.
I don't know. I mean, he was getting wrecked by the serve and volleying
Yeah, he
constantly,
was. That's
and
the
like
thing. He's getting wrecked, but by
yeah,
that.
that's what really stopped him from winning the second set for the most part. His passing shot game was not on point either, so it didn't help him with Djokovic 40 times at the net, and of course that set point that I already mentioned, where he had like the open
Yeah,
space and did not end up taking it. But with how he was passing the whole match, that's actually very understandable because he never had like a shot like this. Like there literally were maybe 2 or 3 points that he won with Djokovic at the net, and like they were actual, tough passes or something. And I guess from that sense, you can see that he was just really struggling. And we said before the match that there's definitely this factor which is very unpredictable on Steen Djokovic Medvedev, where one of the players usually dominates the longer rallies and like the other has to bail out of them. And on Sunday, it was Medvedev who had to just find something else. And whenever he tried to risk it a bit more, like in the third set, the last game, for example, the effects were not there. So I just don't think he really had any business of winning the first or third sets, especially with how little he was able to do on return against Djokovic, only breaking him for the first time in the third set. But he had his moment, second set, right? That I don't think he really did anything poorly tactically. He actually, like, I think when he saw Djokovic collapse after that 31 shot rally, it was like a very, very clear signal. Okay, I'm doing something right for Medvedev.
yeah.
And if he capitalized on the second set, who knows? I mean, I have no idea who was winning that much then. But he did not, and yeah, that felt like game over. But if we're looking at it this way, I guess you can say that his main fault was not taking the second set when he had the chance.
Do you think Medvedev, and I think I might be a lone voice on this, certainly compared to what we were saying during the stream, do you think Medvedev tired a bit too in the third set? Do you think he mentally, physically, or a bit of both just became
I mean,
fatigued?
mentally maybe, but I did think, even if there was, like, maybe they got closer to each other in terms of their physicality in the third, but I didn't really feel like he was tired all that much. And yeah, I felt like this was probably more your feeling than me or Jack's. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it did seem that way. Make sure you hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe, and feel free to get voting in the poll I've got running here. Who is the next player not named Djokovic or Alcaraz to win a slam? Is it still almost or most probably Medvedev, or how do we view this defeat for Medvedev? It's really the problem is that a lot of the analysis that has been going on, including the post-match analysis last night and then into today, is it's really difficult to analyze it for Djokovic, because I think when Djokovic was on 20 or 21 or 22 slams, and there were certain other things, and Rafa was still, more or less fit, and there were so many other things. I just don't know what the narrative is with Djokovic, but there is a few things at least to talk about with Medvedev here. Do we look back on this last 2 weeks, Damien, and say he's more likely to add to his slam tally or less?
He just missed another chance.
That's the negative.
I guess this is a slam where he had to play both Djokovic and Alcaraz. That's not going to happen every time, especially with Djokovic out of the picture in 2 or 3 years, let's say. So, yeah, I would say still is, let's say, I don't know, maybe let's say slightly more likely, just because there's going to be a moment when, even though Sinner and Rune will be a bit better, because, by the way, I think that poll, this shouldn't be this lopsided. I think this is much closer between the three. I get what Ghosty is saying in the chat about the physicality, but that's not going to be forever, It seems like they should sort it out at some point, especially Rune. I hope that by next year he's going to be in a mental and game state where he can actually contend for slams, because this year was clearly a bit too early. at Wimbledon or at the Australian Open. We saw that. Well, at Wimbledon, in terms of that, he was just much worse than Alcaraz. And at the Australian Open, we saw that he wasn't mentally ready. But yeah, I think it should be much closer. And I'm still going to say he is like fairly, let's say that the likelihood is pretty similar, just because, well, he hasn't taken the next opportunity that was in front of him. But at the same time, when Djokovic is going to be out, it will be a bit more open, right? So with Djokovic in the picture, like it's also possible that he's going to get there. He doesn't have to play Djokovic and Alcaraz in every slam, right? I don't know. Sometimes he does, like at Wimbledon. That also happened, right? But sometimes it's Roland Garros, and let's say he gets the Roland Garros draw at another slam. Let's say he gets that Roland Garros draw at the Australian Open. He will be a very solid contender there.
Of course, this poll is still sort of in its infancy, and it may change. But does 67% not kind of sound about right? If we frame it slightly differently, in that, what are the chances of Medvedev winning another slam? 67% kind of sounds about right. Maybe that's a bit optimistic. I don't know.
Yeah, I would go a bit lower than that. I don't know how precisely, because of course, like going 1-2%, this is really not easy. But yeah, I would go a bit lower than 2 out of 3, I think. Just because the other guys, the youngsters, are going to get stronger, and by the time Djokovic is going to be out, the youngsters are going to be maybe like at least on par, as Sean was saying, I think, with Medvedev. I don't think Casper Ruud is going to be a threat, though, as Keen is suggesting. But yeah, Rune Sinner, if they ever sort out the physical issues, and especially in Holger's case, just how raw he is still, even today, and I think they could very easily be on par with Medvedev in just a second. So 50%, I mean, for me, it sounds quite about right, which is a bit of a shame, because it really feels like a story of many possible chances for Medvedev that maybe at some point he couldn't take, like against Nadal, of course, at the Australian Open. But also he has been pretty unlucky. Like, this guy has had 5 Grand Slam finals, right? And they've all come against Djokovic and Nadal, which maybe it doesn't mean as much in 2023 as it did in 2016 or whatever. But still, like, that's something that is going to be tough probably until you get these guys, physically struggling. And if you get them physically struggling, they're not going to be in a Grand Slam final.
Yep, indeed. A positive from my perspective, at least, is if it is less than 67%, but somewhere maybe slightly above 50, it's probably a better percentage, at least in my mind, than it would have been at the beginning of February this year, before going into Rotterdam, and then the run he went on there. Because at that point, if you said to me that he's going to be in the US Open final later on this year and have a chance of winning a slam, I would have been surprised. I was one of those guys that thought he was done. I thought that he'd been found out. I was one of these guys that was on that train, and I still thought it at times yesterday, in certain rallies yesterday, when he was sort of 2 meters inside the baseline and was desperate to get back to the baseline. And I also looked back at some rallies he had against Nadal in both the US Open and Australian final. And there's so many times in those 2 finals of 2019 and 22 where he's like 1 or 2 meters inside the baseline, and you can't go back to the baseline from there really without looking a bit silly, unless you win the rally, of course. And he didn't win the rallies that I was watching. So I guess it's good and bad, if you like. Yesterday is an opportunity missed, perhaps, but I still think the landscape looks a bit better than it did back in January.
Yeah, for sure. I know I was on the team of Medvedev here in top 4, but it was not a guarantee that he was going to be back to this like Grand Slam winning level, or at least Grand Slam adjacent winning level. And he actually returned to it. I did not think, obviously, that he was going to win three titles in a row and then finish runner-up in Indian Wells and then win Miami, right?
You didn't predict him to win Rome? You didn't.
And Rome as well, yeah. But I was mostly talking about the win streak. But yeah, Rome is a fine example here already. Yeah, and when it comes to Ruud, I think I echo what Ghosty said. For the second week, or like, decent results on clay, Casper is definitely a threat. But winning a slam title, unless we have like a very weird landscape after Djokovic and Nadal are gone on clay, which I don't think we will, because we're gonna have Rune, we're gonna have Sinner, and we're gonna have Alcaraz. So how does Ruud beat either one of these guys? I know he has a good matchup against Rune for the time being, but against the other two, I don't see it.
Yeah. And there's just going to be dozens of other players that'll be beating each other. I mean, it's really impossible to tell at any point in tennis what the landscape's going to be. But when you had the big three, aged 28, 30, 29, 27, even in their early 30s, it was probably a easier landscape to predict the next 5 years than before. And then really since the big three, we had a few fleeting moments from Tsitsipas and Zverev and so on. But it's not really been until Alcaraz who we've had a real challenger. And he unfortunately, in many respects, is only just going to overlap slightly. Although I say overlap slightly, Goran Ivanisevic said afterwards that he thinks Djokovic could be here as long as another 4 or 5 years. What do you think to that, Damien?
I don't really know. The truth is that we are in really like uncharted territory. We have no clue what's going to happen, because before, let's say, Roger Federer, no one was playing such high quality tennis at 35, 36. Well, Ken Rosewall, but of course we're talking about a different era, different sort of physicality, different sort of equipment as well. But yeah, before him, no one really played like this, and everyone assumed that, well, Djokovic and Nadal maybe are going to finish like a year or two earlier because they have more physical styles. They did everything they could to extend their careers. Nadal maybe right now is probably over, at least in terms of like winning huge titles. Whereas Djokovic is still going, and yeah, we just haven't seen that ever. We haven't seen someone still be at such a good in such good physical shape at like the very, very top elite level. Basically, has not declined at all. I mean, he's more complete than the player he was in his physical prime. I don't think that that's a question that anyone can really answer right now. We can laugh about this, say there's no way that Novak is going to be playing in 4 years. Truth is that we don't really know whether it's going to happen. By what I'm seeing from him, let's say the last couple of years, I don't think it's possible. But I would not be shocked, because we haven't seen it before ever. So how do we know if there's no precedent, if there's no real evidence to judge this on?
I mean, we're seeing one individual on the double side still playing at 43. You just don't know. And in other sports, we are seeing people playing longer than ever before. Albeit in team sports, but yeah, you just don't know. I mean, Djokovic's decline could begin as early as next year, but it could be as far away as 5 years from now. It's absolutely uncertain. Keen, this is a super, super random question, but maybe things haven't coincided. That's it. I don't think that it's anything more than that. That maybe Andy and Jamie at one point. I mean, if Andy goes out in the first round of Wimbledon and there's an opportunity there, sure, but he doesn't very often go out that early at Wimbledon and so on and so forth.
I'd have to go back and check out, exactly how it went, but I would assume that, playing with an actual doubles partner with whom he's going to be playing for a year, that's better for Jamie, right? Than playing with Andy, 5-10 times a year.
Especially as Jamie has a lot of success there anyway, elsewhere.
So I think it's just different priorities, really, for the most part.
And also, I mean, Andy's doubles abilities are okay, but are they? Maybe Jamie's thinking
It could be. I think we don't really know that, again, because in doubles we have a lot of the time we have players reaching the top 100 who had no shot in singles, and I don't even think that it's because they were actually maybe underrated, or maybe they have some insane doubles skills. But the truth is, the level of the competition is probably lower than it would be if players, if every single tennis player focused on doubles, which is basically what everyone does with singles, right? So yeah, I think it could be potentially, but since they have different priorities, it's pretty hard for them to, I think, to just, I don't know, for Murray to say that, okay, anytime Andy is playing this year, I'm playing with him, and
Yeah.
all the other events, I'm gonna look for someone else. Like that's not easy to pull off.
Um, it's felt last night and then even today, it's felt really difficult to sort of build narratives and thoughts around Djokovic, because I think with the French Open it was fairly easy. Of course, post Wimbledon loss, there's obviously a lot of things going on there. Australia to some extent this year, and so many other milestones that Djokovic has reached in recent years. There is something to talk about. I just find it very difficult to find something to talk about with Djokovic, and maybe there's people that
Yeah.
are going, "Oh, why don't you?" I don't know what to say because he's gone from 23 to 24, unbelievable achievement. He's won 4 now US Opens. In a way, it's like, wow, it's unbelievable, bearing in mind just how good he is on a hard court and arguably the best hard court player of all time. It's unbelievable he hasn't won more. There's all sorts of circumstances behind that, of course, but it's just, I just don't really know what to say regarding Novak. It's just the draw was kind, I would suggest, but he still beat everyone put in front of him, and mostly, with the exception of Les Leger, fairly comfortably. There wasn't a result along the way that surprised me. There wasn't a performance that stood out for me until the final, at least. And then it was just a case of, okay, is he going to play Djokovic is he going to play Alcaraz or Medvedev? And then it was Medvedev. Okay, that will probably be more winnable than Alcaraz, but there's still a lot of things to overcome. But I don't know. It's really tricky to talk about Djokovic after this win, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I do agree with this. I think like 3 slams ago, I already said that, or maybe even 4. I mean, 3 slam titles. I mean, for Djokovic, I probably already said that he's the statistical goat. Like, there's no real argument there. So with every single slam title, he just extends that lead. So
Yeah,
there's
right.
no real change up in this. There's no new argument because we don't have Federer on the tour anymore because Nadal has been out. Because he hasn't, just simply because he's been out with an injury mostly. We just don't really get that sort of new arguments floating around from that way and then the other, and then we have something to chat about. Even and yeah, for before Nadal, let's say, had his injury break, we already sort of had this idea that Djokovic, the numbers make sense. The numbers definitely put him in front, and now he's just extending that. So there's definitely little excitement in this regard. In general, he well, as he said, he only lost the 2 sets to Jera. He beat guys like Fritz. He beat Medvedev in straights. At the Australian Open, he also took out Tsitsipas, Rublev in straights, all in straight sets, right? Like this is pretty ridiculous. You could say that all of these, maybe besides Medvedev, are good matchups, but we are really talking about like 40% of the current top 10 right now. So yeah, I just think what he's doing right now is a little beyond unbelievable. The fact that he's still crushing these guys like that, and the argument of easy matchups against Fritz or Rublev, like it kind of stops making sense if you actually just realize that, yeah, like these are basically all of the top players right now. So
Yeah.
how can he have an easy matchup against every single top player? I guess it is theoretically possible, and in a way he sort of does. There are definitely playstyles on the tour that sort of make him work a bit harder. However, it simply means that the guy has a great matchup against 85% players on the tour, probably as a whole. He just simply matches up well against almost everyone, and yeah, he is obviously just unbelievable. And it can be hard to find the words. It can be hard to just still keep producing the takes, just because there's no takes.
That's
He
right.
is the
That's probably what,
he
there's
is the
no
goat,
take.
and that's really it. There's no
The,
takes
the,
anymore.
the take. Listen, this is the only take I have, and it could be interpreted one way or another. But the only take I have is that at various points during the 2 weeks, we were looking at his half of the draw, and we were saying who could do something, who could damage him. not who will beat him, but who could do something odd, and Goyo, I think, was the guy that sprang to mind.
Yeah, but it wasn't quite Hurkacz
No, I know,
Wimbledon
but
round
that's where
4,
we're
right?
at. That's where we're at,
Like,
partly because of the draw, but also
yeah.
partly because of where he is against his nearest rivals. From at least I was looking at the rankings today, 5 to 10, which should be super, super tough. You could be number one in the world, but if you play number 5 in the world today and you play them all back to back, let's say in the next sort of 4 or 5 rounds in an ATP finals or whatever, I mean, it's just not going to happen. But let's just say you play them all back to back, you should lose at least one of those 3, 4, 5 matches. But you just know that there's a 95% was more or less the stats that I built, albeit that I incorporated Alcaraz into those stats today. Looking at the likelihood, bearing in mind their previous performances, and I think it gets worse when you look at slams, but let's just go. The chances of Tsitsipas, and this is, so of course it's not including Medvedev, it's also not including Rune as well, who's ranked 4. But when you look at Tsitsipas, Rublev, Zverev, Sinner, and one or two others from the sort of top 10 between 5 and 10, Casper Ruud, I guess, as well, and you put them all in a pot, and you put them up against Djokovic and Alcaraz, and probably if you just put them up against Djokovic, it gets even worse. The chances of one of them beating Djokovic or Alcaraz is 95%. Sort of the chance of them beating is 5%, which is not.
Yeah, Zverev, I would maybe say is a lot above the rest, but yeah, that 5-9 group that we have right now, none of these have beaten Djokovic. Am I right about that? Tsitsipas has 2 wins against him, right?
From I
back
looked
in the day.
Grand Slams. I think none of them. I think 5 to 10. Who's 10 in the world right now? But
Zverev. So Zverev, he hasn't beaten him at a slam.
That's
but,
right.
He has beaten him a few times, and I think Zverev in general has a decent shot against Novak. If they play at their peak. Well, at their current peak, not at Novak's 2015 or 11 peak. However, Tsitsipas beat him twice, right? At the very beginning of the rivalry. He was 2-1 up, and then he lost like a billion matches in a row. Rublev, I don't think he's beaten him. Sinner, definitely not. Fritz, no, definitely not. 0-8. And Casper Ruud, he's not beaten him either, right? So the guys between 6 and 9, he hasn't even lost to.
At the slams, I think if we just look at the slams and 20 odd matches, I think we're looking at a Zverev win over Alcaraz and a Sinner win over Alcaraz. One at Wimbledon, Sinner over Alcaraz at Wimbledon, and of course Zverev at Roland Garros last year. And so, and so then when the draw pans out and you look at the one of the players that maybe could be Djokovic, Holger Rune, is going into this tournament in no way, shape, or form looking like he's going to make a second week. Never mind a semi-final, which I think is where he would have had to get to before he'd meet Novak. And then you see Medvedev as well on the other side of the draw. Yeah, that's where. And so we were looking at the draw, and we were pulling out stuff from our behinds, going like Marajan or I said Karatsev just because he's a bit wild and he has beaten Novak before, and that's
what you look at, like someone who can come out, crush the ball, and maybe not give the other player that much of a chance.
Which side of the draw Fekini was on the end? Maybe he was on the other side in the end. But these are the guys that just may be a bit weird, and who knows what might happen.
Someone who can come out, crush the ball, maybe sometimes can just steer the match in his own favor, despite the opponent's best ideas and best.
Maybe Balázs was that guy, and Medvedev spoiled it. Medvedev beat him, and he spoiled that unbelievable final that we could have had because obviously at the beginning of the side of the draw, and Balázs could have
it was no Wimbledon for sure. Well, I'm gonna just skip the Attila Balázs comment because he clearly wasn't beating any player in this draw, the whole 127 of them. But I just think that Vesely, but by the time Vesely got to if he got to the fourth round, he would have been dead, like physically dead. But if they play, it would be a bit of excitement at least. But certainly compared to Wimbledon, it was really so much different because we saw that he has a pretty easy half at Wimbledon as well. well, easy again for his standards, because for most players this would be, just normal. And at least there was that Hurkacz round 4, which looked like something that maybe could be troublesome, and it actually was. But even you throw in Hurkacz in his forefront, and I don't think Djokovic struggles at all. It was just the grass thing, and here he was even less vulnerable. Well, he was vulnerable to Jere, I suppose, but we all know that he actually did not come close to losing the match, despite going down 2 sets to them.
It was the match that no one saw. I mean, I'm saying that from a European perspective, of course, but it's almost like that match almost didn't exist. I remember waking up and getting the messages, which was, I think Rebecca went out the same night, and it was like, Rebecca is out, and wow, Novak, something like that. And I was like,
yeah.
I just think because of the way that's written, that means Novak was pushed rather than went out. And of course, that's how it panned out. Okay, let's have a look at the rest of the US Open, and other players did contest it other than Djokovic and Medvedev. Ben Shelton. Let's begin with him. Overall, I would suggest a very positive tournament. Yeah, he's allowed a few defeats to Djokovic before we start going down a Tsitsipas alleyway, I think, with him. I think his quirky sort of results in terms of the 2 Grand Slams he's played in where he's excelled, and then elsewhere. Otherwise, we might see a bit of quirkiness, of course, on the clay, where he will, of course, ultimately end up with a positive win-loss record at the end of his career, because we just know that's in the stars. But ultimately, it's been a really positive tournament for him. He's only been on the tour 13 months. So in a way, he's almost behind Rune and many others that are of a similar age. And plenty of positives, right?
Absolutely. I mean, for a guy who is still so incredibly raw, to get these sort of 2 rounds, I don't really know where this puts him. Certainly, this helps him a lot, because by the time he made Melbourne, like if he actually wasn't winning matches at all until the end of the year, then he would have been in big trouble. He loses the Melbourne points, and he's suddenly like maybe outside the top 100 even. That's not a possibility anymore. He's going to have a lot to gain in these grass clay seasons of next year, where this year he was just picking up the experience. Next year he should be better. That's really amazing for him. I don't know, maybe he's always going to be a player like this, no consistency, but just overperforming on the biggest stages and the sort of settings that he loves, with big arenas and, with the college energy to him. Maybe that's always going to be his game. I don't know. It's definitely a bit striking to see just how there's so much still left to improve. There's so much polishing up that you can do with his game. And yet he already has a Grand Slam semifinal and a Grand Slam quarterfinal, not at the same event, to his name. So it is quite ridiculous. And yeah, I think especially in terms of the ranking points, the pressure that is going to be on him in the next few months, this is just incredibly crucial. It just basically allows him a few more months, a few more, maybe even a full year of what he was doing in the spring this year, which was just playing sort of without any real stakes, just sort of trying out stuff. Maybe that led to his poor results. I don't know. Maybe he actually needs to have some pressure on him, to perform. Maybe that's when he does his best work. But yeah, this is naturally quite huge for the guy.
And also, I think, sometimes you might get a draw open up, or certain things can happen. You could be 35 years old like Tatiana Maria and find yourself in a Wimbledon semi-final, deserved as it may have been, but these things happen. And maybe even Tommy Paul finding himself in the Australian Open semi-final. And sometimes we look at draws suddenly opening up and you're like, wow, one of these 8 players is going to be in the semi-final. However, Ben Shelton's run this year, Aslan Karatsev, Tommy Paul, Francis Tiafoe, I think that's okay. Dominic Thiem was also in the second round, albeit that he was sick, cashing in the first round as well. I think that's a regular or even slightly tougher route to a semi-final than possibly Djokovic even had as the number 2 seed.
Yeah, Tiafoe, Paul, Shelton as the always dangerous contender. Team catching, that's pretty easy, I think, in the first 2 rounds. But yeah, Paul and Tiafoe, I think everyone had them in like semis, quarters, probably playing in the quarters. They were definitely the best two players in that quarter, I think, just looking at it before the event. Was it because that quarter was particularly strong? No, it was because the seeds in that section were pretty weak. However, yeah, to beat them both, especially in the States, I think was pretty huge. There were some little, like, I don't want to call them asterisks, but the way Tiafoe was so subdued against him, and also the way Shelton handled the heat much better than Paul. But yeah, these were a couple of awesome wins that all year, besides the Australian Open, he wasn't really close to replicating. And I guess even at the Australian Open, he was not getting them because he beat who, like Zhang, Jari, Popirin, right, and then someone that I cannot remember right now. So it also wasn't really anyone of Paul's or Tiafoe's class.
Okay, over to the side, somebody we've barely mentioned, which is kind of funny in a US Open review, and somebody who's dominated the landscape for most of the year. Carlos Alcaraz. No cause for concern, right?
Not really. The fact that he won Wimbledon really saves. Like it still makes his year great. Whatever really happens from here, like he might not win a match until the end of 2023, and I'm gonna say this year was still positive for Carlos because he won Wimbledon, and it doesn't really matter which slam it was, although it kind of does because it seemed that Wimbledon might be tough for him. It actually seems like after Djokovic is done, Alcaraz might be a huge favorite there every time. However, yeah, basically what I'm talking about is that he already has a slam two at the end of this year. So the year when he turns 20 is a very good result. Still very much keeping him in, on the right track if he ever is going to attempt to get 15 slams. I don't know. Maybe that's something that will happen, but he is on track to do that. Let's just say he wins one every year from now on. That seems like an achievable target. This year he fulfilled the criteria. And yeah, in terms of the loss against Medvedev, I guess he also felt what we were all saying, that that the Medvedev matchup should be really easy for him. And Medvedev was sort of just able to stick around with him until 6-all and 3-all in the tiebreak, which is weird that it happened so early, I guess. But I guess that was the mental state of Carlos there. That was already when he lost his mind for a little moment. It continued. He lost the second set basically on the back of that tiebreaker. So yeah, I think just a learning experience of sorts as well for him. Something that maybe he needed to go through in order to reach even greater heights. And to be honest with you, before that match, he was progressing through the tournament at a wonderful pace. So yeah, no real reasons to worry. It's a shame we didn't get the final. But I think also there could have been some slight physical issues in that Medvedev match. And yeah, maybe just something that he needed to go through.
He's taken a bit of time off. I saw some things today as well where he's sort of having a few checkups. It doesn't seem to be anything crazy, but I believe he has. Carlos has also pulled out of the Davis Cup legs that are happening pretty much from tomorrow, I believe. He used an expression, and I was just trying to find it on Google. But I haven't quite found it exactly, but hopefully this is the right one. In Spanish, he said after the end of the sort of 3-all in the first set tiebreak, a fairly easy translation thing was that he just sort of lost things mentally and he lost his way. But more significantly, in the second set, he said he was I think he said something like "estaba sobre la luna," which directly translates. Because I saw this translation written, "I was over the moon during the second set." Now, during the second set, which is a set he lost 6-1 in English. Damien, are you familiar with "to be over the moon"? Are you familiar with that expression?
Yeah, of course. It's not that. Yeah, definitely
Yeah,
not.
he definitely
I think
wasn't.
it wasn't sobre. Like I think when I looked up the original Spanish quote, it was actually fairly like if you knew any Spanish, you would get it. But yeah, that's how Google translated it, and of course that felt a bit
I
weird when
think
you
he
just
did
heard the
use.
translation.
I think, and I'll stand to be corrected.
He definitely used the word moon,
Luna.
and
He used the word moon. I thought
yes, and he definitely did. But I
I
think
was on the
the
other side of the
preposition
moon.
was a
Maybe
bit. I think
maybe
the
he said it was.
preposition was a bit different. I can't
Yeah.
remember. We're basically
Anyway,
guessing
one
here.
thing's for sure, he wasn't over the moon during that second set. I think he was. Well, I know he was just saying I was a bit lost, and I was elsewhere. I think is what I would, what I did suggest is what he meant by that. I was elsewhere, and
I think
I
he
wasn't
said en la luna, so
inland or
that's
on the moon.
very
Yeah, on the moon. Yeah, yeah.
that's very different to, or like in
To
the
over
moon,
the moon. Yeah, yeah.
well, yeah, so it's very different to sobre. That's why that's why I think it was weird that Google Translate actually got it
Yeah.
this way. But
No, I saw that.
if you knew the Spanish prepositions, I guess then there was no confusion.
And yet that was also quite, and the reason I'm bringing it up is it's not unimportant, because I think it was an interesting thing. There was another interview actually I saw. Oh, it was with Medvedev, I think, after the final, was his on-court interview, which are rightfully chastised and just dismissed and found to be uninteresting. But actually, I thought Medvedev's on-court interview after that match was quite interesting. The way he was talking about trying to serve it out, and his thought process through that, I thought was quite interesting. And Medvedev always entertains regarding his on-court interviews, mostly because of the humor. But actually, there was a moment there when it was like, okay, this is actually really good technical stuff that he's offering up. And I actually really enjoyed that on-court interview, maybe more than any other. And basically, Medvedev on-court interviews, sign up for it. The rest just probably put in the bin. Okay. Medvedev, Alcaraz, semi-finals, tick. The rest of the tournament, the rest of the players, is it just Dominic Stricker? Is that it?
No, we'll just quickly answer this one from Keen. I think there's nothing wrong with what Marochan has been doing since the Alcaraz upset. Never going to be the most consistent player in the world, but he's been losing to quality players. He has made it to his first slam at Wimbledon, of course, at the US Open. Fantastic performance against Gasquet. So I think it's perfectly fine. I have I basically have zero disappointment regarding what Marochan has been doing since. Because I did not think he was going to be getting wins like this every single time. Anyway, I think we kind of need to talk about Zverev, maybe.
I jumped, did I? I jumped to Stricker.
I
Yeah,
don't know.
listen, there's a dozen players you could talk about. It's in a way, this tournament, by the way, which I do think Ghosty, I know, mentioned it earlier on in a comment on another video, but it did disappoint, especially on the ATP side. But there's still stories there, and that's why I went for Stricker. But yes, Zverev, where I guess again a bit like Medvedev in a way, sort of slightly more positives than negatives, but ultimately flat to deceive.
I mean, he just couldn't touch Alcaraz, which is not that. I mean, it's not really a great look into the future when it comes to him, because he very well could be in that Tsitsipas Medvedev sort of frame right now, where the new generation is already a bit better than him, and that really limits his potential to win slams, to do something that he has not achieved yet. But yeah, I think he basically maintained his Cincinnati form. I will stand by something that I said on like one of the streams, that his level right now, I don't think it's really much different to the one pre-injury.
Yeah,
He is.
I don't know. My eyes, I'm relying on my eyes. I will say this: my eyes are sort of still not quite at that level.
I mean, what did he really do before the injury, right? I
Maybe
mean,
my eyes are so deceived and so recency bias, and yet it was 18 months ago. I am thinking about a match and a half against Alcaraz and Nadal.
yeah, but like against Nadal, honestly, the quality was spotty. There was a lot of physical issues. There was a lot of tightness, and well, mostly
But
Zverev, but
he
both
used to lose
players.
those spotty, tight,
But he
weird. That's
kind of
not
did.
his domain.
Kind of
Yeah, he
did,
kind of did,
I
but I've
guess.
also been on.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it was on a podcast or not, but you and I were here recently, and I hear you out on this. You were here saying, I think he may well have gone on to win that match. Is what you said.
If he won the tiebreaker, but we remember how he blew the first one. But yeah, anyway, regardless of whether you agree, which I think it's really subjective, so there's no real right or wrong here. I think he really maintained that form, and whether it's a touch below 2022, I don't know, but certainly I would not, I would put him as like one of the top 5 players in the world right now for sure. I think it's only really the difference of opinion in terms of whether it's Sinner or Zverev at the 4th spot. There's really no other player you could really honestly put in the top 5 right now going into the indoor season. And everyone is saying to skip Zverev, so let's just skip Zverev. And you mentioned
we're gonna end Zverev, not literally, of course, but we're gonna end it with this question. Okay, here we go, Damien. Fingers on the buzzers, as we would say during a quiz in the UK and maybe in Poland too. Tsitsipas, Rublev, Fritz. Do you know where I'm going with this, or
more or less? Yeah, I expected something like this. Yeah.
Tsitsipas, Rublev, Fritz, Ruud, Zverev, TFO, I guess. Let's leave it at that group. So I'll repeat it: Tsitsipas, Rublev, Fritz, Ruud, Zverev. One of those is winning a Grand Slam, and the rest are not, for example. Which one is it?
Okay, buzzed in. I know that the safe option and the popular vote is Tsitsipas. You probably know by now that I would actually still answer Zverev. Rublev, I appreciate, Jane, that you are a fan of his, but I don't think that's happening. And Fritz might be at the bottom of my list. Who else was there? Ruud?
Yeah, I'm actually.
I guess Ruud and Fritz would be at the bottom of my list.
I'm just going to share on the screen as well, just as I look at the ATP rankings, because that's your group. I jumped Sinner. That's the one I jumped. I think for fairly obvious reasons, in that I think that he would be the most likely in that group, in my opinion at least, and also has the
so Sinner was there.
Sinner's in the group that I'm looking at in a second.
Come on.
Yeah,
okay,
no. I didn't put Sinner in the question. Deliberately.
Okay.
I deliberately left him out because he's 22. Yes. I think he's still got lots to show and can push definitely Alcaraz. So I deliberately left him. And I've got TF at 11, but actually I did frame it intentionally with Tsitsipas. Yeah. So I left him out intentionally. Yeah. So I put 5 in the group. And so I think you are going for ultimately the 26-year-old Alexander Zverev.
Yeah. That's what I would still go for. Yeah.
And in isolation,
solid margin.
In isolation, Zverev, is he more than 50-50?
Probably not. I don't think so. But I think
you know who this is most damning for? This last 3 or 4 minutes, the person this is most damning for.
Is it Tsitsipas? But that's how I've been feeling about him the last few months. I don't know. Maybe we talk this time next year, and maybe I'm gonna say something completely different. It's fully possible. We'll see. Obviously, the draw can open up for everyone. Not for everyone, but the draw can open up for a player, and then of course all of these revelations, all of these ideas that we have might not really. Okay. Lots of love for Rublev in the chat, and also Casper Ruud still getting some help from Keen as well. That's surprising.
Is Keen a big Casper Ruud fan? How about that?
I don't think so. I think actually on the contrary. So that means he must, still appreciate him a lot, despite that. I don't know. I'm not going to say that he's a hater of Ruud, but I certainly did not think he was going to praise him that much, and clearly he also didn't. Never thought I'd be the one making a case for Ruud, but that means that he really, still respects his tennis abilities, obviously.
Casper Ruud, Andre Rublev, and so many others as
well. The belief, honestly, there is something like this, which I think it was actually Jakub, our dear late friend, who called it the nice guy factor. because when we were picking Grand Slam qualifying predictions on the show, and we are doing that for every slam, for like the past 8 or 9 maybe, and there were a lot of picks for Kimmer Kopejans, for example, and at some point when it didn't work out for like the 10th time, and actually not at Wimbledon, because at Wimbledon he qualified despite a 0-8 career grass record, but never mind. But let's say, I think we both picked him at Roland Garros, and he lost in the first round, winning like 4 games. And I think Jakub called it then the nice guy factor. That's why we're picking Kimmer to qualify, because he's a nice guy. We like him, so we want him to do well. And I think that's basically what's happening with Rublev when people say, like, for example, Nick, nice to see so much belief in Rublev still. Like, I think that belief is truly based on the nice guy factor. How can you watch Rublev Medvedev at this event and think that Rublev can win a slam? I honestly don't know.
I don't know if he falls into this category, but I mean, maybe there's people you've met on the Challenger Tour as well that you've also fallen. I don't know if he falls into that category where you've actually met him and gone, oh, okay, maybe he can do it or will do it. I think Maria Sakkari, by the way, I know it's this ATP Weekly, but I think she falls into that category amongst hacks and journalists and stuff who go, oh, she's so nice and she works so hard.
It happens a lot. Kopejans was just an example, but I think this happens a lot. Yeah, there's this friend of mine, Carlos, whom you met in Madrid, right?
Yes.
He was tracking down the stats, and he's also a Kimmer fan. He's also an Altukcelik Bilek fan. So I noticed he's also always, thinking, oh, this is the tournament for Altukcelik Bilek. And the last year, 12 months or so, it never really is. But for him, I noticed that it's really. Just personal, like private. If a player was nice to him in person when he was interviewing them, then that's where it probably happens. I mean, for me, honestly, it's happened to me as well. So I get that.
I mean, predicting and hoping is fine. I don't think it affects too much of our integrity, far less than others, I'm sure. Talking of which, by the way, well, actually, I'm not even sure if this is talking of which. This is probably a real random comment I'm going to make right now. I bumped into some Danish people in a pub earlier. I'm letting a little cat out of the bag there by saying I went to the pub before this show that was about half an hour late, in fact, 40 minutes late. Yes, I did. And they were like, no, and the tennis, tennis. Oh, Holger Rune, yeah, Clara Townsend as well, Townsend. I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, you know,
they
some
knew Clara Townsend, wow.
Yeah, right. Well, one of them was like an amateur stroke professional golfer, and she said that she had played with Sebi Korda's sister, maybe. Is she a professional golfer
Yes,
golfer?
Yes, she is.
Right.
2 of them, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. 2 of them. I think she said both of them as well. And she'd also met Sebi Korda's father, Peter or Peto or how it's pronounced, as well, because he was very much bigging up women's tennis and suggesting that that's a template for women's golf to follow. Anyway, a tangent Sebi Korda tick. He gets his regular mention. Outside of the players that we've mentioned, what else can we talk about regarding the US Open, regarding the first week? The only thing I can think of is Tsitsipas losing to Stricker. Maybe I'm missing something, but that's all I can remember from the first week.
When it comes to that question about South Africans that won a slam, in singles, it's probably just Johan Kriek, who I think won one of his slams for the States and one of his for South Africa. There were some in doubles for sure. The first week, I think Tsitsipas over Sticker was the biggest. The other way around, Sticker over Tsitsipas was the biggest one. Zhang over Ruud may be similar, but the quality was not as good, and also Ruud was not perceived, on hard courts as such a big threat. There were 2 other players who also, just like Stricker, broke the top 100 with a 4th round run at the US Open,
yes.
Goyo and Hijikata. However, I don't think they really had that sort of huge win, right, as Stricker had against Tsitsipas. And with the sort of expectations that have been floating around for Dom Stricker ever since he won Roland Garros Juniors 3 years ago, and then had this wonderful 2021 campaign for his age. I think this was really huge, and like everyone is now sort of counting on him to repeat this. I hope he will. The indoor season is where he usually does well at. And he has increased his followers count by a lot since
And what was
we
he on?
talked about this.
Is there a more wholesome Twitter account, by the way, than Dominic Stricker's? So first of all, tell us about his Twitter account compared to now.
I think it was around the time when he won Rovereto in February. February maybe turning into March, and he had 450 followers then, which I remember I was very surprised by. Another Jakub story, but I remember he was like, "What? He has less followers than me," uh, and and
And he's still got less. How many are you on? 5,000 or something?
than me, yes, but then Jakub, I think he already has more, and
Okay.
I think one of them is trending in the upward direction, and the other probably will not increase by all that much.
What are you on?
However,
You on about 5,000? Famous 6,000?
7
Oh,
200,
7.
something like that. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, and what was I talking about? Because I started thinking about Twitter followers
Sorry,
all of
I
a
know.
sudden.
It's just a
Um,
wholesome Twitter account with some funny things going on, which I'm going to highlight in a second.
Okay. Yeah, I was just talking about the indoor season coming up, and it's where he typically does great. He reached the second rounds in Basel and Antwerp last year, so I hope that this is not a flash in the pan. Obviously, he has the talent for it not to be, but for a few years it was going for him kind of poorly. But this year he has been playing with like a new, more mature mindset. It showed up big time at the U.S. Open, and the way he came back right against Tsitsipas in the fourth. Some really good resilience, especially after blowing maybe is a
He was
stretch, but
serving for it, right? Oh, no, Tsitsipas was serving because of the point.
Tsitsipas was serving for it, and the second and third set tiebreaks they were actually pretty poor from Stricker. So to then play another one and actually be amazing at it, and also the fifth set, given that his fitness is not what he's known for, and he just played a very clinical match. And this comment from Ghosty sort of coincided with me saying that fitness is not what he's known for, but that's true.
Yeah. But of course, you were talking about his maturity, and I started to think about I want to dance with somebody as he's singing that.
Yeah.
Which is very funny. I mean, I think this actually almost tells the story in a way, just looking at his Twitter page here and some of the things, and his very, very nice tweet post Tsitsipas win. But I love this, which I saw today. Hello, top 100. My name is Dommy. Nice to meet you. Which I think it's him writing it. I mean, that's the problem with a lot of these tweets that we see from megastars.
I mean, megastars, yeah, but I think Dom Stricker still
He's not
probably
quite. He's not Cristiano Ronaldo, which is the example I was about to cite. I don't think.
At least a few months ago, he was still doing that by himself, because you could see it by the fact
I
that
still think
he
it
was.
is kind of.
I think so, probably, because he was basically like not entering Twitter for a month, and then he would go on like a retweet and like spree in terms of like anything that he would find about him, and it didn't even have to tag him or include him. So I think at least a few months ago it was him. Tanking Stricker, from time to time. I mean, even this year I was in February, and in Vilnius he played Joris Delor in the opening round. Very exciting first round clash. Everyone was waiting for it. He wins 4 games, and after the match I talked to Delor, and he said, "I don't know what it was really. I don't know what happened, because the guy basically didn't want to play from the very first game." But I feel like that was maybe the last of such performances. There was this one against Christian Harrison, I guess, just before the US Open, but who cares? It's a bit like Arantxa Rus beating Iga Świątek, at Rome 2020. She then won Roland Garros, so who cares? And I think that
the Rome defeat before Roland Garros.
Yeah, and that Winnipeg Challenger first round against Christian Harrison is also going to be forgotten when it comes to the Stricker US Open forefront.
For those of you out there wondering what I meant about the Dominic Stricker Cristiano Ronaldo comparison, Cristiano Ronaldo is a footballer, and this I've just seen is his following on Twitter. So it's 109.5 million. It's interesting how he's got it 109.5. Like 109, 110 isn't enough.
Random question, but is this the most followed Twitter account?
No, it won't be the most followed. No, it'll be probably the most followed footballer, because of course his main rival will be Lionel Messi, and I'm not even sure if he has a Twitter. He probably does.
It is really close though, because I just checked.
Oh, really?
And yes, and apparently Ronaldo is at fourth in the fourth spot. Yeah.
How about
So
that? Who's third? So I'm guessing.
people.
What's the guy who owns? What's his name? Tesla guy.
Yeah, of course.
What, is he ahead?
He's the first. Yes.
Is he? Yeah. Oh, what a coincidence!
He not only owns the Tesla, he also owns X or Twitter. Or
exactly.
whatever.
And he also has the most. I wonder if he's bought followers like allegedly somebody else has as well.
Yeah, allegedly, yes.
Allegedly, yeah.
So what's your guess for number 2 and 3 then? Do you have one?
Oh, okay. So Ronaldo's 4. I'm actually surprised at that. Justin Bieber.
Yeah, that's number 3.
Okay, I'm actually pleased I've got one of them.
Well, you've got 2 of them already, out of the top 3. So
yeah, so there's only one left, right? I've only got one left to go.
Elon Musk at number 1, Justin Bieber at number 3, and number 2 is the only one you're
missing. Lady Gaga or Taylor Swift? Oh, is it
Taylor Swift is 7th and Lady Gaga is 9th. So these are actually good guesses.
Crazy.
Too. Yeah.
By the way, yeah, you and me, Keen, we know it. In fact, I think he bought 7,000 actually. But therefore, I've got what? Give me one more. I'm going to go with a Mother Teresa reprisal. No. Mother Teresa fan account. No, go on, tell me, because I have no idea.
It's actually Barack Obama.
Oh, Barack Obama. How about that?
Wow. Yeah, I'm trying to see if there's a tennis player in the top 100, but for now I cannot find it.
I wouldn't have thought so.
Yeah, no tennis players in the top 100. You need to have almost 22 million to get into the top 100. I don't know how many. I don't know.
Even that seems not that many. I mean, I imagine that Rafa and maybe Roger would be sort of 15.
I think Roger probably does not have that. I don't know.
Rafa's about 16. I'm gonna guess.
Djokovic has 9, so it's not Djokovic. And yeah, Rafa has 15.6. So I guess it's still quite far off. I think Roger would have a bit less. Yeah, 12.7. Anyway, that's
Dominic Stricker has 2,300. So just another 16 million.
I bought followers? No, that wasn't about me. I swear I have not bought followers.
Yeah, he's teasing.
My progression is very, very natural.
So, Dominic Stricker, tick. Are there any other stories left that could be at least positive? Because I think Taylor Fritz, in a way, despite I know that Ghosty, for example, was saying, Taylor Fritz has been under the radar and he's done well and he's playing well, but then it was like, yeah, but the draw and okay, he's come unstuck before, but that's that. Who else was in the quarterfinals? Yannick Sinner. Yeah,
he was not in the quarterfinals, but that's fine. He was also.
You know what I mean, though. 4th round.
He was also there, and I guess he just didn't show anything special, which is why he's not a big talking point out of this U.S. Open for sure.
Physical, I think, is the thing there again. It was apparent that obviously he had cramps, and I'm still fine with Yannick Sinner. We can give him another year if you like, but if we start seeing more of the same in 2024, because actually I remember this time last year, post US Open, he went into just every single tournament. I was just thinking, this guy is struggling here physically from September till February.
He did just win his first big title, right? So he kind of gets a pass because he did make progress. He won his first big title.
Yeah.
So.
Ghosty there saying we've conveniently skipped over Molchan.
Yes. That's what we're going to choose to do, because we don't talk about losers here. Losers, round 1 losers.
Of course, yeah, Dimitrov, of course, ended up going on to beat Andy Murray and then ultimately losing to Sasha Zverev, if memory supplies. Anything else from that first? Because really, the bigger topic for me from the US Open mostly the men's side, but there was a period on the women's side as well, was just there was a vacuum from third round to semi-finals of, okay, there was that 5-setter between Sinner and Zverev that just made us all wanting it to be over as soon as possible, including both players on the court. But that was about it from the third round to the semi-final. Was there something in rounds 1 or 2? I know we touched on Casper Ruud against Zhang, which I'm going to say was round 2. We also mentioned, of
Same
course,
day as Tsitsipas Stricker, yeah.
yeah, Tsitsipas, and that was round 2 as well. I think that's US Open tick, I think.
Sort of, yeah. I do get what you mean. The most of the matches in the quarterfinal stage, they were extremely dire. There was a lot of maybe just better baseliners overcoming the one-dimensional guys. So matches were like Djokovic, Fritz, Rublev, Medvedev. They were basically the same. Alcaraz, Zverev in a way too. Then maybe even Djokovic, Shelton. Shelton is not really one-dimensional, but let's say these 3 quarterfinals were very similar to each other. They were equally uninteresting and unimpressive. So I do agree that while the first week was as fun as usual, there was definitely a lot of just lopsided matches, and nothing really did deliver on the scale that we were hoping that Alcaraz Djokovic would deliver. Zverev Sinner 5 sets. I actually did not think that I was gonna be enjoying. You said that everyone wanted it to be over. I don't think I did personally, but it was not like the fully classic 5-setter. It was just a little too scrappy, I guess, for that, if we can say that. Damon, would you rather have a beer with the Polish Eagle or Magdalinet? I mean, obviously the Polish Eagle. I would love to meet the guy, actually. And it's a bit of a dream of mine to shake his hand. And he's like a very Polish person, I think, in his values and in his sort of attitude. And I think he represents the country extremely well. Well, he also Magdalena also does, but I definitely would much rather have a beer with the Polish Eagle. And it seems like with the sport that he's playing and with his physique, he probably drinks a lot of beer. Why do you call him Polish Eagle? I don't think it's about
sure who he is.
Hurkacz.
I think
I don't think it's about Hurkacz. I actually don't know why Krzysztof Ratajski, the best Polish darts player, has this nickname, but that's I don't know. He simply does, and that's not Hubert Hurkacz. No.
Yeah, so it's the top player of darts in Poland, which is a rather cumbersome way of saying it. And also, I was just looking back at the top 10, funny enough, and thinking, actually, that question that I posed to you earlier regarding Tsitsipas, Rublev, Fritz, Ruud, and Zverev, in a way, sort of ticked them off. And anyone just tuning in for that for 60 seconds could just say, and they just tune in for that question and I'm saying, oh dear, Tsitsipas, Rublev, Fritz, Ruud, Zverev. That would have been enough to tell you about the US Open for those guys in many respects. That you could have been away on a different. You could have gone to Mars or on the International Space Station for 3 weeks, come back, and once you got the details about Djokovic and Medvedev in the final, the next question, and you don't need to know. You just need to know Tsitsipas, Rublev, Fritz, Ruud, Zverev. Where are we at? And that tells you
Again, I would say there's one guy who deserved the mention, and we did that despite the sort of lack of approval from the chat.
which is
Zverev.
oh yeah, Zverev. Yeah. Oh yeah, maybe, but I still think we're a long way from a. I don't know. I still think we're further away from a Grand Slam win for Zverev right now than we were in June 2022. Maybe it's the injury. Maybe it's some sort of skewed view of history that I've developed since the injury. I just haven't been in entering a tournament with Zverev, whether it be 1,000 or I think a 5. Oh no, he won a 500 in Hamburg, but 1,000 or higher since then. Thinking, yeah, is he a topic? And I don't think he has been, and I'm not sure if he ever will be. But We'll see. We'll see. But by the way, there's obviously a very good chance that none of those guys that I mentioned will win one. And in fact, if that was category 6, none of them will win a Grand Slam. Maybe it would be the one that you would lean to.
Who knows? By the way, we have to answer this. Hubi is the Polish what then, if Krzysztof Ratajski is the Polish eagle?
Swan? Butterfly? I saw a butterfly yesterday. I mean, he's just very dainty and
Wallflower.
delicate. Yeah, dainty and
The
delicate.
Polish wallflower.
Yeah. What were you thinking?
I didn't really have anything. I was struggling to come up with anything.
Butterfly kind of works for me because he's delicate and dainty and doesn't really have any weapons that will hurt anyone.
That's not truly right.
A moth may be even better because a moth apparently, what is it? The thing about a moth, it has like the most powerful poison
It's
known
attracted
to man.
To light. I don't know.
Yeah, but no, the moth and poison. You got to know this before you die. And I'm about to give you this. There's a thing about moths having an unbelievable venomous poison, but they just can't administer it. They just don't know how to do it. I don't think it's not that they don't know. They've got it within them. They just don't. They don't have the capability to deliver it. I'm not sure if that even fits Hubi Hurkacz as well. But
and how would that be like if I killed a moth with my hands? I'm not gonna die, right?
No. I think it's got to come through their teeth or something.
Okay.
Something's going on here. I mean, maybe I'm just googling it right now and getting very little on me. So maybe I'm wired them up. But hopefully, someone in the chat can help me out. Moths, Hubi Hurkacz, tick. Is there anything else in the next 7 days in men's tennis? Is it just Davis Cup, or have I missed something?
I mean, 5 challengers this week, Szczecin, Rennes, Santa Cruz, Guangzhou, and Kerry. So
Seville was last week, was it?
Yes, Seville has just finished on Saturday.
Yeah, I missed that one. And Seville is one of my favorite cities. I really should have thought about my calendar a bit more clearly. And anyway, big up Seville and tennis. That was on clay, I guess, in Seville, right?
Yes, yellow clay, actually. This invention, I think the surface is called Albero, and maybe they're gonna get rid of it, actually. That's something that a friend of mine, Carlos, mentioning him again, has told me that they are maybe planning to get rid of it, which would be a bit of a shame. You can't see the ball really on the stream, but still, as a bit of a.
Can you see it as a player? I mean, can you see it as a
player? The player you can see, but the ball is a little tricky to see. But I think as a one-time thing, just 1 week of the year, it's actually great.
I love this challenger thing with sort of. They've turned up at the tennis court a bit like I do on the odd occasion, where they've just gone with one of these sort of spider things, put their iPhone in there and gone, all right, that'll do, and you're sort of trying to make things out more or less. I mean,
that's not really accurate, but okay.
I'm thinking of Canberra. Maybe it's just Canberra this year that I was watching and just going, okay.
I mean, it's not a great camera, but it's not an iPhone though. It is a regular.
I'm also thinking about the angle. The only thing that they do have is a score.
Oh, the angle is not obviously the angle is not the same for every challenger. It's not something that's going to stay, regardless of the event, and it's not a tour thing. Basically, wherever they can put the camera, they're going to do it. So you're going to get it at every single event of the year, which currently is like almost 200. You're going to get a different camera angle. And this week is certainly great for the Challenger Tour with Davis Cup coming up. And the players that are not playing the Davis Cup basically have nothing else to play. And obviously, I do know Sonic the Hedgehog. I don't know why that is even a question. I mean, everyone does.
Did someone say something along the lines of, "I think Damien doesn't know who Sonic the Hedgehog is"?
Not really. I mean, Max said Damien must know Sonic the Hedgehog.
I know. I see Keen here saying, "Damien, do you know Sonic the Hedgehog?"
Yeah, and before that, Max said Davian must
Okay.
know Sonic the Hedgehog.
No way that Max would say something so abstract that's so out of character. Okay, that's it. Then we'll speak to you all in a week from now, more or less. And I think Mario will be back. You'll be pleased to know that there'll be some semblance of normality and maybe even time as well. And Mario will be back in this seat that I'm sitting in right now. I don't mean the exact seat. That would be kind of weird. But you get the idea and all that other stuff. And in the meantime, hit the like button and subscribe. And yeah, all right. Well, that's the US Open done. We've got no more Grand Slams left for the year, but there is still plenty of tennis to come. And we've also got Vanch right now in Vanch or Vanch. Vanch has been texting me a bit panickingly. Oh, I've got these videos, and I think they're going to be pretty exciting. But he's in California right now, and he's wanting me to upload them and we'll get it done, guys. We'll get it done. There'll be some exciting videos out there, but we might be a day or two before we have a live show and all that other stuff. So yeah, that's it really. What a unusual rant to end on. But then last night, Damien, we ended on me, to be fair, ranting about flat earthers. So you'll be pleased to know we're not talking about flat earthers tonight, but join Damien and I on Wednesday night for our weekly episode called Flat Earthers Talk Tennis, and we'll look forward to you on Wednesday night. Damien doesn't even know that yet, but we'll prep him on that. Basically, the Earth is flat, and we'll speak to you then.
What about Copernicus then? We
Copernicus,
started
of course,
with Copernicus,
our Polish
and we are
friend.
finishing.
He never even existed.
This isn't great because we started with Copernicus and now we're at flat Earth, so we are actually going backwards in terms of the
Flat
development
earthers
of
would suggest
science.
we're going. Flat earthers would suggest we're going forwards and in a
That's
very
true.
flat direction.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.